Confidence, the stage is yours.
Okay, I think we've started. Can everyone hear me? So I'm just going to try to share my screen. I'm having an error saying my browser is not permitted to share my screen. So just give me a moment to fix that. Okay.
All right. It would appear that confidence is having some problems. We'll be back.
Everyone hear me? So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I believe I've been able to fix that. All right, so guess everyone can see my screen. All right, so I'm going to get started. Hello everyone, my name is Confidence and I am a developer advocate from Appsmith. Today's talk will be about how to build internal tools with low code. So let's get started. The first thing is, what are internal tools? So to simply put, internal tools are software that are developed and utilized within an organization to manage its internal processes. So they can also be called internal facing tools. And good example of this is something like an employee wiki or a database GUI tool or any other tool that can be used to manage the internal processes within an organization. So why are these important? While use cases may vary, internal tools are used for various things. One such example could be process management. Say, for example, managing customer support. Another good use case for this is updating user record. A customer changes his contact address and would want that to be updated on the product end. An internal tool can be built for managing things like this. Or it could be used to tie together a couple of services as we see on the screen, something like Stripe, GitHub, Zendesk, Notion, or even your custom API or database tool. And this is where Appsmith comes in, because with Appsmith, you can easily tie together all these various services and tools used internally to simplify the workload that is required to be performed by your team. We're going to talk more about Appsmith as we move on. But sad to say, internal tools are known to be notoriously hard to build. And this is because traditionally you have to write the front-end code using frameworks such as Bootstrap, React, or Vue. Then you need to go back to write the backend or API server that will actually connect to the database and tie in a couple of other services that you need to have your app up and running. And you also need to handle things like authentication, sessions. You need to handle maintenance and updates for both the front end and back end app. And all of this is cumbersome to do. Sometimes it may take you weeks or even months to build the first versions of these tools, and maintaining it down the line just becomes more expensive. So what options do you have? You could make use of pre-built code solutions or frameworks like APR Next, Django Admin, or React Admin. This gives you a higher starting point to begin building your application, but all the other challenge of having to maintain the app as time goes on still come up if you go with either of these tools. A better option is to try no-code products. This is because they give you a really nice UI builder that lets you to drag and drop widgets you need to build the app. And with that, you are able to get started within a matter of minutes. But the problem with these tools is that they start to fall apart when you need to do something complex or something custom. And this is because the tools such as this give you a limited tool set. So you're only able to build with the tools you are given. You're kind of like in a sandbox environment, and you can't go out whenever you need to. Actually, the best solution is to go low code, because you keep all the benefits of no code, which is being able to quickly build your UI using drag and drop. But it really starts to shine because you also have the ability to write code whenever you need it and wherever you need it. Actually, low code is the best of both worlds because it combines both the ability to write code whenever you need it and the flexibility of being able to drag and drop widgets to build the UI for your application. And that is basically what Appsmith is. As a platform, Appsmith does the heavy lifting for you and manages access control, deployment, and collaboration tools, and gives you a simple IDE that lets you drag and drop widgets to build your UI, write JavaScript whenever you need to, and talk to your database or other API services that you need to integrate with. And this makes it really easy to get started and build something complex within a matter of minutes. So we would like to show you how to put all of this together, because I believe that seeing is believing. So in this talk, I'm going to do a small demo of building a task management dashboard. And for this demo, we would be tying together a couple of services. We'll be using Firestore as a database backend for the task manager dashboard. And we also want to send out email notifications using Anything. So we're going to see how to do all of this right now. All right, so now let's start the demo. I'm just going to get the screen ready. All right. All right, so I would like to give you a quick tour of what we have in the database side of things. We are using the Firestore database, and we have an Asana collection that holds all tasks we have in the database. A task has an assignee, has an array of comments where each comment has an author and a text. We also have a description, a due date, a priority, a status, and a title. And this is the shape of the data stored in the database. Then for sending out notifications, we have a simple Anything workflow configured here, which would receive data through a webhook and send out email notifications through Gmail whenever there's an update on a specific task. So to get started, let's head over to Appsmith to get building. All right, so this is my canvas on Appsmith, and we already have some UI widgets laid out. This is to make things a little bit much quicker, but you can go into the widget section to drag in widgets whenever it is needed. The first thing I'll need to do here is to connect to the Firestore database. And to do that, I'm going to head over to the data sources section and go to the create new tab. And then I can create a new database connection to Firestore. So let's call this Firestore. All right, we need to supply the database URL. So let's do that. That is my database URL. I also need to supply my project ID, which is the same as the database URL excluding the Firebase domain. And also, I would need to supply some service account credentials. This is gotten from the settings tab in your project on Firebase. So I'm just going to add that here. I can test to see if everything looks good, which it does. And now I can save this and begin writing queries using this connection. So the first query I would like to write would be one to fetch all tasks coming from the database. So to do that, I'll click on the new query button on the Firestore data source we just created, and let's call this get task. We are going to set the method to get documents in the collection, and for the document part, this is going to be getting data from the Asana collection. I'm just going to add a little bit of sorting here so that we get the most recently created task coming out first. So let's run this, and we see that we get some data from the database. Now this looks good, so I can go back to the canvas and actually display that data coming from the get task query in the application. So I'm going to go to the widget section, and now I would bring in a new list widget. So let's bring in a new list widget. I'm just going to resize this a bit, and we can move this within the container. Okay, so this looks good. What I want to do here is to bind the data coming from the get stats query into this list widget so that it gets to display the data. So I'll need to write get task.data, and here we have the data coming in from the query. And we can display that data by using the widgets within the list. So I'm just going to delete the image because we would not be needing that. So a task has a title. So we want to display the title. We also want to display the assignee, and we want to display the priority of the task. So I'm just going to bring in a new text widget and display the priority, which will be current item.priority. And we can see the priority of each task. So let's expand this. All right. The next thing I want to do is to implement filters for the data displayed within this list, because we want to be able to filter by assignee. We also want to be able to filter by status and filter by priority. So to do that, I have the option to write JavaScript since this is a no-code product. So I can go in to write some JavaScript that will actually filter this data out based on the status of any of these filters we have right here. So I can write some JavaScript. The data returned is an array, so I can do a dot filter. And let's try to filter by assignee. So t dot includes the item selected from the assignee filter. So this will be f assignee dot selected option value. And there we would only have items passing that meet this criteria for filtering passing through the filter. So let's select me, for example, from the assignee filter. And you can see we only have tasks that have been assigned to my email address showing up on the filter. So I'm going to reset this by setting this to all. And let's add in the other filter for the other let's add in the logic for the other filter we have. We have a filter by status, we also have a filter by priority. So I'm just going to add all of this here. And it's similar to what we did for the assignee. We are just chaining the new filters we want to implement to the previous filter, and there we have a filter applied for every of these drop down we have, both for status and also for priority. Now we also want to display data about the task that is being selected. So we want to touch that, we'll be able to click on a task and see more data about it. But to do that, we need to add in a view button. So I'm just going to bring in a button widget right here, and let's call this view. All right, so I'm going to set this to a secondary button type. And when this is clicked on, what I want to do is to store the task that has been clicked on in the local store. So I will need to use the store value function, and I want to store it to the key of current task. And for its value, it will just be the item that is clicked on, which is current item. So clicking on the first task here would save that task into the store. Now I can go on to build a display for the task that we want to view more information about. So I'll bring in a form widget so that we can view more information about this task. I'm just going to expand this. All right. So I'm just going to place this by the side. Okay. So now we have a form. We can start displaying data about the task that is in view. So the first thing we need to do is to bring in a text widget to serve as a label for the assignee. We also need a text widget to display the assignee value. We would need to display the due date. So let's just bring in a text widget for the due date. And we would need a date picker widget to display the due date. We also need to display priority. So let's bring in a text widget that would serve as the label. And I'm going to place this right here. We need a drop-down widget for this. We also need to display the status. So we'll need a text widget for this. Okay. And we also need to use a drop-down for the status. And lastly, we need to display the description. So let's bring in a text widget. I'm going to place this right here. And we would need an input widget to display the description. So I'm just going to place this right here. And I can expand all of these widgets so that they look nice and are well sized. So we have that for the description. We have this for the status, for the priority, for the due date, and also for the assignee. Now we can begin displaying data by writing some JavaScript to actually pull in data from the store and display them on the widget. So for the first text widget we have right here, I want to display the title of the task that was clicked on from the list. So this will be appsmith.store.current task. Because we need this a couple of times, so I'm just going to copy this. So it is going to be current task.title. And we'll see that we have the title showing up. Let's expand this so that it looks nice. All right. All right, that looks nice. Next, we want to display the assignee. And for that, I can easily pull that out from the store similarly. So this will be absent.store.current_task.assignee, and we have the assignee showing up. I'm going to do the same for the due date. So let's call this due date. And for the widget, I'm going to update this to say you due. For its default date, we can pull this from the store. So I'm just going to paste in that. I'm going to pull it from the store. So this will be current task.due.seconds. And this is in Unix timestamp. So what we need to do is to format this so that it can be understood by this widget. So I'm just going to use the moment library to format this date. So this will be moment.unix. And we'll see that the data has been formatted and is correctly displayed within this widget. We also want to display the priority. So let's do that. So for the label, let's call this priority. All right. Now we would need to make some updates to this select widget. So let's call this U priority. For the options, I'll need to supply a JSON array of options. So we have high, we have medium, we have low. And for the default value, I can pull that from the store. So this will be absent.store.current_task.priority, and we have the priority configured. All right. Now let's go on to build the status. So let's call this status. And we can go into update the name of this widget. I'm going to call this new status and supply an array of options, which we have to do, we have doing, and we have done. And we can pull the default value from the store. So this will be absent.store.current_task.status. and we have the status shown right there. And lastly, we want to do the same for the description. So this will be you description, and we can pull the data from the store. So for the default text, we're reading data from the store, and we can update this label to say description. All right. So this looks good, and we are now able to click on a task and view its details on the details pane. So I can show you this by clicking on a new task. For example, the third one right here. So I'm going to click on the view button, and you see that the data is updated and shown accordingly on the details tab. Now we need to add some logic that would allow us to update a task, because right here we actually have a form, and the benefit of having a form is that it allows us to see the data and as well update the data whenever we need to. So I'm going to configure this button. Let's call this the update button. We want it such that when this button is clicked on, we actually go to do some updates. So for the on-click action, what I want to do is to execute a query, and I'm just going to create a new query using the Firestore database I configured earlier. So let's call this update task. All right. And we will need to supply two things for the updates. So first, I'm going to set the method to the update method. For the document path, I can pull this out from the store. So this is going to be appsmith.store.currenttask.ref.path. And this will give me access to the document ID. Then the other thing I need to send up is the body for the actual update. So I'm just going to paste a JSON body for this. And what we are essentially doing here is that we are reading the values for each of these fields from the widgets we configured earlier. So we are reading the updated status from the updated widget, from the status drop-down widget. The same goes for the priority. We're also reading this from the priority widget, the description, and for the comments, we are just reading this from the local store. Taking a look at the evaluated value pane, you can see that we have the data coming in from those widgets actually displayed here. So this gives us a nice idea of what we sent up, and we know everything works as intended. All right, so let's go back. And we see that when this button is clicked on, we actually want to go and call the update task query. All right, that looks good. We also want to be able to delete a task. So to do that, I'm going to configure this reset button. So let's call this delete. And we are going to set this to danger button so that it has a red background. And now we can go on to also build a query that lets us to do a delete. So I'm going to head over to the Firestore data store, and I'm going to create a new query. So let's call this delete task. When it is clicked on, what we want to do is to delete a document, and we can grab the document path from the store. So this will be appsmith.store.currenttask.ref.path, and then we have the document path showing up. So whenever a task is deleted, whenever the delete button is clicked on, we want to run the delete action. So when this is clicked on, we can go to run the delete query, and that task would get deleted. But we need to do some cleanup, because right now when the task is clicked on from the list, we're actually saving it in the store. So when the task is deleted, we need to go and remove it from the store also. Now we can go into the JavaScript node, because we want to do a couple of other things when the delete query runs. All right, this should be delete task, not update. When the delete task runs, we want to do a couple of other things. So what we can do is to pass a function to this query, so that that function will be executed after it is successfully called. So the first thing we need to do is to actually clean up the store. So we can do that by resetting the state of the store, and this will be current task, and passing an empty object to reset the state of the store. Right. We also need to call the get task query so that we're having fresh data coming back from the database. So I'm going to call the get task query. So this will be get task.run. And lastly, we need to let the user of this dashboard know that the task has been deleted. So we can do that by showing a message. So I'm going to do show alert. And what I want to do is to send a message saying task deleted, and set this to a success type. All right, so this would all of this function would be done whenever a task is deleted. The store will be reset. We also would rerun the get task query, and lastly, we would call. We would show a message to the admin, letting him know that the task has been deleted. All right. And next thing we need to do is to display comments for each particular task, because a task has all of this data and also has data for comments. So let's go to the comments tab and actually build a UI that would display the comments for each task. All right. So I would need to bring in a new widget. I'm going to bring a list widget and place it right here. So let's expand this to take up the entire space. And we can read the comments data from the store because we are actually saving it in the store right now. So this will be appsmith.store.currenttask.comments. And we can begin to display the comments data. So every comment has an author. So this will be currentitem.author. And we also have a text. So this is going to be currentitem.text. And we can see both of these displayed. So now I can expand the text widget and place it properly so that everything looks good. So I'm just going to expand this, and that looks good. All right. We also want to be able to delete a comment. So let's add in a button that would let us delete a comment. All right. All right, so let's call this delete and set this to a secondary button style. When a comment is deleted, we want to do the reverse of what we did for the delete task. We want to remove it from the store and then run the update query that will actually make the updates and send new data without that particular task back to the Firestore database. So for the on-click action for the delete button, I'm going to go to the JavaScript mode and write some JavaScript that would help us do all of that. I'm just going to write an if right here because we want to do multiple things. So I'm going to wrap all of that in an if. So the first thing I want to do is to grab the current task from the store. So this will be on task. I can grab that from appsmith.store.currentTask. And next, I want to filter out the comment that is deleted from that particular task. So this will be a task dot filter T. So if the task matches, if the ID of the task matches the ID of the comment that is being deleted, we want it to be filtered out. So this will be current item.id. And for the data returned from this filtering, we want to store it back to the task object. So this will be task.comment. All right, this should be task.comments.filter. Yeah, that looks good now. And now that we are filtering out that task, we can go back to store the updated task with the new comments in the store. So let's do store value and store this back in the store. So this will be current task. And we would need to store the task back. Right, that looks good. And now we can go on to perform the update. So I can run the update task query. When this is successful, I can go to run the get task query so that we are grabbing fresh data from the database. So I'm just going to run the get task query. This will be get task.run. And all of this looks good. So we can try this by actually deleting one of these comments. So I'm just going to click on the delete button to see if everything works fine. And we can see that that comment was removed from the store, but it seems to have an error here. So let's go back. So we're running update tags.run. So let's do a quick refresh so that I can see if this was actually removed from the database. Okay, head to the comments, and that was actually deleted from the database. So I'm just going to try to delete this. So let's see. Okay, that seems to work. All right, everything looks good. That was actually removed from the store of our application and was also removed from the Firestore database. Now, we also want to be able to create a new task, and for that, we already have a flow prebuilt for that. So I'm going to click on the new button, and we have a modal showing up that lets us to create a task. And when this is clicked on, it's doing something similar to what we have for the delete comment. We are generating the comment within the application. We are saving that to the store, and then we run the update query to actually save that in the database. But what we want to do at this point is that we would like to notify the assignee of this specific task. We would like to notify the assignee of this task that a comment has been added so that the assignee can go and check that comment. And for that, we have an N10 workflow wired up for that. So for the workflow, we would need to send up a couple of things. We need to send up the assignee's email. We also need to send up a message, and we need to send up a task. So I'm just going to execute this workflow. I'm going to copy the URL of the webhook. Okay, that's copied. And I'm going to execute this. And now we can head back to the Appsmith app to connect that. So I'm going to click on the data sources, create a new API, and let's call this send email. All right, so this is going to be a post method, and I can paste in the URL of the webhook. I'm going to update this URL to reflect the IP address of the machine where it is hosted. So this is 192.168.205.111. All right, so that looks good. And for the webhook, we would need to send a couple of things. So we need to send the email, the message, and also the task. And for all of this, I can send that up right here. All right, so we need to send up a message. And for the data for the message, we can pull it from the parameters that will be sent to this API call. So this is going to be this.params.message. We also want to send up an email. So similarly, this will be sent to this API call. So this will be this.params.email. And lastly, we want to send up some task, which will be the title of the task. So this will be task. And this is going to be this.params.task. All right, now we can go back to run the send email API whenever a task is created. So let's head back and go to the create new. And for this save button, after doing all of these updates, what we want to do now is to call the send email API so that an email notification gets sent out to the assignee of that task that a new comment has been created. So this will be send email.run. The first parameter is going to be a function we want to be executed when this is successful. So I'm just going to pass in a dummy function. The second parameter is a function we want to be executed when this fails, or if this fails. I'm going to pass a dummy function. And lastly, we want to pass in the parameters to the API call. So this is going to be an object. First key will be the message. And for the message, we can pull that from the input that was typed into this text input we have here. So this will be comment input.text. Next, we want to send up the email address of the assignee. So this will be Appsmith. We can put that from the store. This will be appsmith.store.currenttask.assignee. And lastly, we want to send up the title of the task. So this is going to be Appsmith store.currenttask.title. And we have the title of the task. So I'm just going to head back to make sure that the webhook is still running. So I'm just going to call this to make sure it is running. And we can give this a test by typing something into the comments. I'm going to say hello there. And clicking on the save button would create the comments and run the sending of the email. It seems I have an issue with my update task query. I'm just going to check to see what's wrong with it. But going back to the N10 workflow, you can see that we actually have some data coming in. Taking a look at the data coming in from the app, you can see that we have the title of the task showing up, the message I typed in, which is hello there, and the email address of the assignee. And checking the Gmail node, you can see that that message got sent out to the assignee. We have a success response here telling us that that was successfully sent to the assignee of that particular task. So that looks good. And now we can go on to finish building the application. For the home page, we need to do a couple of tweaks. All right. I can take this out. Now we need to head to the home page. And we have a chat widget right here. So for the chat widget, what I want to do is to display task by status. So for that, I need to pass in some series data. And we can see that gets displayed on the chat widget. We also need to add some splash image. So I have an image widget right here. I'm just going to put in the URL of the splash image, and that is updated accordingly. And the last thing I need to do is to put in some title for the application. So let's call this Task Manager. And now that everything is done, I can deploy the application. Let's give this permission to deploy to open a pop-up. All right. All right, so here is the application we just built. We have a nice dashboard that gives us task completion by status. And for the task view, we can view a task, and that gets displayed right here. We can see comments associated with that particular task. And more importantly, we can go to add a new task by filling up this form, and that would get created and shown on the task view. Yeah, so this is how easy it is to build internal tools with Appsmith. Now let's go back to my slide. All right, so I guess we can take a few questions. So I'm going to be checking the chats so that we can take a few questions that you may have in mind. Okay, so a question just came up. The question is, I would love to see low-code solutions tap into decentralized stroke privacy-focused services. Can I plug in to say a GunDB service with this? Yes. So for Appsmith, we have integrations to various databases, but right now we don't have an integration for the GunDB database. I'm going to open up an issue for this so that you can integrate with this to manage privacy. But yeah, you can connect to various existing databases. Right now we have a handful of databases that you can connect to and manage users with it. I hope that answers your question. All right. Do we have more questions? Okay, I saw your question showing up just now. Okay, I can see it again. Is Azure Cosmos DB supported? Right now, it is not supported, but we are working hard to bring in support for all database that we know everyone is going to be making use of. Yeah, so we are going to be adding this soon also. Okay, so there's a question on how complex can the JSON documents be? Do you mean how deep how deep the nesting can go? If that's what you mean, then the nesting can go as deep as you would want it to. But the only challenge you would have is writing some binding to access it, but that should not be too much of a hassle. You can make it as deep as you want. All you need to do is to write some chaining to access the data you want to access at every point where you would need to make use of that data. All right. All right. All right. Thank you, Isaac. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I believe that's all. You can catch us at the Appsmith on Twitter. We are also Appsmith.org on GitHub, and we have a community page on our YouTube page where we regularly upload videos. So these are all the channels you can catch us on to get updated on what's new with Appsmith. Thanks everyone for joining. I would see everyone some other time.